Well, thank you guys so much for joining today to do this fun roundtable. I was talking with Alan and Greg, both kind of together and separately, about ideas for this and trying to kind of brainstorm, basically taking the whole idea of a Zoom wedding. I know receptions have slightly kind of opened up now, but I do think the Zoom thing is going to be here for a while. I have a consult with one of my couples for December. They're honestly trying to debate between doing it now versus waiting. And I think the idea of being able to live stream part of the day would actually incentivize them to get it done in December, right? And not have to postpone, which the groom was very relieved about when because I don't think he realized that we do that sort of thing. So thank you guys so much for joining. Alan, why don't you introduce yourself, and then Greg, and then we'll kind of set the table for today.
I am Alan Chitlik, and my company is Puget Sound DJ.
I'm Greg Lowder, and my company is Affairs to Remember Entertainment, and I'm a master ceremonies disc jockey, and I do some lighting and Zoom work too. I'm a Zoom moderator.
Yeah, Greg and I had a memorial service on Sunday, and he kind of spurred this whole thing. And I joked with him. I said, "Yeah, you should definitely add that to your business card now, like digital correspondent, something, moderator, whatever." But I want to thank you guys so much for being here. I think Alan I had texted Alan, I had emailed him. I said, "Hey, Alan, do you want me to come up with some questions for today?" And Alan said, "No, I think we should do this just purely conversational." And so I figured, well, I'm teasing. I told Alan we would do this conversationally. But what I think we should do is I think we should go around the horn and figure out what are some problems or potential problems, shortcomings with Zoom weddings, trying to do, and even obviously memorial services. I mean, we don't want to joke about that too, but it's a real thing right now where people are not able to attend these events. And so I want to figure out what are some potential issues, and then how can we, and specifically you guys, because I think a lot of people think about DJs and they think about audio, which obviously we're going to talk about today too. But it's also just the whole idea of having somebody there to kind of guide the ship, kind of figure out what's going on. I know that if all the weddings that I've done, it's a lot of me like typing in the chat or like trying to yell at the officiant, like, "Hey, say something to the live stream," which, obviously we're going to try to fine tune all that stuff today. So Greg, let's start with you. When you hear the idea of a Zoom wedding, some issues, some problems that you think that you could help solve, what are some issues?
Well, interesting enough, just a few weeks ago, I attended my first Zoom wedding as a guest, and it was in Arkansas, and it was a very good friend of mine, and his daughter, who's also a friend of mine, and the one thing I didn't realize at the time, and I wish I had and made the suggestion to them, but they were, first of all, no cell coverage. They're in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas, and that's understandable. That's going to happen. You get the low bandwidth pop up. But the one thing they didn't do, two that are important, is they didn't check the box. They're all the programs are a little different, but they didn't check the box that said mute everybody on when they come into the chat. And so people would come in, and some people were on phones. So if you're on Zoom and you're just listening, it's really tricky. And some people would come in on video and, start having discussions. And of course, you're in the middle of the ceremony, and you can't really communicate with them. The other thing, and this is kind of what you were talking about a minute ago, and what I did on Sunday for the memorial service, but it would work well at a wedding, is have someone that is not on site. I mean, you could have them on site like I was, but I think it's even better to have them not on site. Put them down as what does Zoom call it? The
guest host. I'm just making notes of these so we can go back through them.
Yeah, the host of the event, and then they can, just like I did on Sunday, facilitate it, greet everybody, thank them for coming, maybe initiate some conversation, introduce people, and then once things start, let people know that what's going on, and mute people. I mean, that was the key. It's just, if people had been muted when they came in, it would have made all the difference in the world. But that would have been hard to do in the middle of nowhere. For us, that'd be like, Snohomish or out in the boonies a little bit with no cell coverage.
Perfect. So I'm going to note these down. We'll go back through. So Alan, what are some things that come to mind when you hear, I mean, and it kind of used to be like the horror thing, right? Like a Zoom wedding. Oh my gosh. And now it's like totally, it's like we had the Sunday, I had a memorial or a wedding on Tuesday. We have another wedding on Saturday. I mean, this is very much a thing right now. So Alan, what are some things that you think of?
Well, first off, I agree with the theory that Zoom weddings are here to stay. I don't think that it's just until we make the hump over the virus, then and all of a sudden it's going to stop. I think there are some advantages to Zoom weddings in terms of the travel and the number of people that you can be involved and things like that. And I think that we have seen the infancy of Zoom weddings where maybe it's just a ceremony and maybe it's just very one way, right? That you're at the wedding and you're broadcasting it to your friends. But I think the next evolution is going to be way more two way,
Mhm.
where the couple or the anybody who's there in person will be able to interact in some way with the people who are there uh, in online. So I think as you think about the those things, the first thing that you have to have is good audio.
Yeah.
And I don't think that couples necessarily think of that. They think of Zoom and it's just going to work because when I work on my computer, people can hear me on my computer mic, or if I'm on my phone, people can hear that. But it's a whole different story to have a camera or another device 30 feet away or 40 feet away. Right now, I am this far away from my microphone. Um, and with today's technology, Reed, I'm interested to hear your take on this, but I feel like with today's technology, a good camera can get a great shot from 40 feet away, but there is no way to get good sound from 40 feet away or whatever. So I think couples have to start with that presumption. How am I going to get good sound? The best way to do that is to have microphones all around. From a ceremony standpoint, have a microphone on the officiant. If there is a groom, have a microphone on the groom. If it's two brides, think through some other place that you might be able to put one. And then anybody who's speaking just needs a mic, and those need that sound needs to go somewhere into a central location and then come back out. However you're broadcasting it, whether it's through a phone or a tablet or a laptop or a good video camera, take that sound and get that out. And I think that's going to help build the enjoyment for the guests because really, if the picture cuts out, but you can hear it, you'll stay. You'll listen and you'll be involved. But if you can only just see the picture, but you can't hear or understand what they're saying, I don't think that's very enjoyable at all.
Yeah, it's so hard. The whole Zoom thing, and we do a variety. I usually do YouTube at least for kind of the one way out. And but Alan, like you said, I think it's so hard for clients and couples. I had a Zoom like a Microsoft Teams call yesterday with a client looking for corporate work, and she was trying to figure out with Zoom, and it was kind of the same conversations we're having now. And she goes, "Well, we had a company, and they were live streaming for us, and we've had some issues. And so, what can you offer?" And I said, "Well, what kinds of issues were you guys having? What's going on?" Well, sound stuff and the thing cut out or there was getting feedback. And I said, well, honestly, a lot of that is probably just problems with Zoom, right? I mean, like you said, we stand here in front of the computer and you talk. And I mean, we even had a little bit of kind of setup today trying to figure out like camera placements and mics and stuff. And this is just us three standing in pretty controlled environments, not a lot of stuff going on versus my one on Tuesday, we were like at Crescent Lake or Lake Crescent or whatever out in Port Angeles. Like, I'm set up on like a picnic table on the beach with like cables running. I mean, it's just a lot more stuff to deal with. So, yeah, like you said, a lot of the issues simply come down to just, the programs and just the assumption that like, well, if it works like this, then yeah, I can just put a laptop out on a chair somewhere at the ceremony and it's going to be the same thing. We have our friends are getting married in a couple weeks and I'm just going to film their wedding for them. And they're having me do that because I offered to come bring and set up and charge a little bit more to do the whole live streaming thing just because we pay for the data. It costs a lot. It costs a lot to stream. It's like $10 a gig each way, like up and then to process it. So it costs a lot. But they said, well, no, we'll just put a Zoom. They're doing. I mean, it kills me, right? But I'm like, what am I going to do? It's not. and it's not my wedding. So Greg, what are you thinking about that?
Well, a couple things. I think watching you on Sunday and the technology that you have available, and the, we were set up to go a couple of different directions with that one. We were one way for the memorial service, and then two way, like you were talking about, Alan, for the open house, where I was moderating and talking to people, and that meant we had a lot of technology. And I think if you can afford it, and it's, it's important to you, and grandparents aren't going to be there, then hire a professional, because they're going to do it right. And there are so many different scenarios. We were set up for about 6 different scenarios, and ended up running 100 feet of Cat 5 cable just to get enough internet to do it, and to do it right. And the YouTube looked great. And 80 people, I mean, 80 people, I mean, that's crazy. We're watching that and live. But if you have to do it yourself, and this is what I was thinking. So let's say we're doing the Zoom, and we're doing it like I described the cell phone. Um, could us as sound guys, let's say, didn't have a professional, so they're doing it with the Zoom, they have a camera on a tripod up front, they're using Wi-Fi or cellular, let's just say they have enough service, could we be in the back also zoomed into the call? Are the sound people near the speakers, or plugged in off of our board in some sort of way to give them the microphones? And then we just zoomed in, and they were audio on one channel and video on another. Would that work?
I don't know. Can you pin video with one and then have, I guess you could bring up your audio. Yeah.
Yeah, mute every. I mean, again, you'd need somebody to mute the right people, because you would get feedback, or could, off the camera one. But that might be something interesting to try, because and then the question would be, is could we bring it in off of our board into? I certainly could do it on a laptop, but I don't think I could do it on a phone to run the audio straight in there off of my board. Maybe, I don't know. That's an interesting question. So if I brought a mini plug off of my, as an output off of my mixing board into my phone, would that then put the audio on Zoom? I don't know.
Alan's.
I think it would, if you
Just,
set it as line in.
oh, you're right. Just like I would off of Spotify, or I've never. Well, I take that back. I've never done it broadcasted that way. Anyway, it's something to try, because in theory, I think it would, because it's it's a mic input. So that might be a possibility, at least, to do it, but I certainly would test it way before I tried it and stuff.
Yeah,
Have
and
you
then
heard of a Sling box,
Sling
but for
Studio.
this?
Yeah, Sling Studio.
So Sling, so yeah. So my wedding in a couple of weeks, I talked to the groom 2 nights ago, a bride and groom, and they said that we're going to use that, and that the friends of them use it for a hunting and fishing show on Facebook Live, and they have little labs and they keep it close. But in this case, we're actually going to do what we just talked about. So they're going to shoot video from 2 or 3 cameras up front into, I don't know what platform they're going to. Oh no, it's there's some app, like it's called Wed Broadcast or something like that, and then they're going to run the audio off of my board from the Sling Studio thing. So I'll
Yeah,
let you know how it goes.
yeah. Well, and it's tough to, it's a tough balance between getting too in the weeds with all this. I mean, it's I think, and Alan and I were talking about this before we started too. I think the perception is, Alan was saying this, if you have a video person, right, they're going to be responsible for the audio too, and that can be accurate. And then that's also, there's a line, right? And so the one that we had on Tuesday, normally, like obviously when I was with Greg at the memorial, having a DJ is awesome because they handle all of that. I'm just plugging in because when you're trying to live stream, there's a lot of other stuff you're trying to deal with, right? And so like if I've got, 3 cameras set up, you're trying to figure out about, the cameras and those batteries and the shots and the exposures. And then you're trying to make sure that the stream is staying connected, that it's going to YouTube, that you're talking to people in the chat. If they have questions, you're moving cameras as you need be. So it's really nice to have, a DJ there or some sort of sound person. I mean, just to be able to run, just to kind of take that off our plate. Now, obviously, like we can, I have a couple wireless mics, but the wedding that we had on Tuesday, we had talked a couple weeks ago trying to figure out what was going on, and I said, well, hey, so what's kind of your game plan for the wedding? In my head, I'm thinking, officiant, bridegroom, really easy kind of setup. And she goes, well, actually, we have um, there's two officiants, and then there's us, and we're doing our own vows. We're not doing like repeat after me vows, so that means that they're going to need to be mic'd too. Because that's a good question, right? If you have a bride, whoever getting married, if it's just kind of like a repeat after me, you don't obviously you want to hear them, but you don't got to be like in their face with it. You can get a little more like ambient noise, maybe, right?
Sure.
But then they had a mother, like two fathers, and then the grandparents were all going to toast, and they all wanted to be separate because of social distancing.
Wow.
And I told her, I said, you really need to have an audio person. Like, you really need to have this. We're trying to live stream on the side of a lake in the middle of nowhere. We got the signal out. It was, iffy, but we got it. But I said, you really need to do this. Long story short, we thought we had a plan in place. I show up, it wasn't the right plan. And so then it's on me, right, to figure out like, how the heck is this going to happen? And it ended up being okay. But I think had they just have had it, and I know that extra $800,000, whatever to do, right, for you guys to like run a ceremony, sometimes it's worth it if you're not having all those guests come and you have that extra cash. I mean, what do you guys think about that? About the money that you're saving, and then using that to hire an audio professional? Alan, what do you think?
Well, I think that certainly getting someone in charge of that audio who knows the technology and can achieve that is going to be a great starting point for that Zoom wedding to be successful, right? The guests being able to hear is really job number one. And having a professional who's both got the equipment and the knowledge and can sort of guide you through how to do all that, I think makes a lot of sense. But then there's many other things that even in these more limited Zoom weddings that a person who's been a host and an MC can help you with, and they can sort of moderate the Zoom room
Yeah.
and and the chat, and they can sort of help potentially facilitate the guests being entertained. Maybe if you're trying to Zoom for the whole day, maybe there's a point at which there's a cocktail hour or there's dinner, uh, and that's not very interesting to watch from remotely. But maybe you've got somebody there who's working with the guests and entertaining them, playing games, two truths and a lie, or something, whatever it is about the couple, um, that keeps those things potentially going. So, and then musically, I think it's important for couples to have the experience of getting the music played that they want at their ceremony.
Yeah.
I think many people have a vision of what they want to hear when they're walking down the aisle, and you can try to get your cousin to do that,
Uncle
but
Bob.
Uncle Bob, but it's not a guarantee. But if you have a professional come out, you're going to get that music played, and people don't really think about this, but there are some timing issues with processional songs. Like when somebody like Greg or I does a ceremony, uh, when if it's a bride, the bride gets up to the front, we're going to fade that out sort of at the right time while she's got that when she gets there. But somebody who doesn't know might just want to let that whole song run through
Yeah.
because the bride picked it out. And so everybody's standing there really awkwardly, like, when is the song going to be over?
I prefer
And
the really harsh stop where they just hit stop and then it just dies. That's what I prefer. And then the awkward silence.
yes,
That's what I
I
Yeah.
like.
should have done
The,
that at your wedding, brother.
Yeah.
the pause
Um,
button on the Spotify.
Yeah.
Or even Alan too, when they get to the front, sometimes it's a 10 to 20, 25-second difference in whether you fade it when she gets to the front aisle, if you fade it when the past, they do the handoff. Sometimes the pastor says something. If you don't ask those questions, the song will either end too soon or too late, um, and not be good. Because that, how that 30 seconds of silence is, why they do the handoff.
yes.
And it's always awkward.
Alan, I
And
think I cut you off for the other part. Yeah, please continue.
well, I was also going to say that one other thing that can be helpful in today's environment is testing all this stuff. Like
Yeah.
there are certainly situations where I think couples are getting ready for their wedding and they've got Uncle Bob set to do his thing, and something goes wrong, right? So having a professional there, in my opinion, I would try to rehearse it just like you rehearse the ceremony and the order and the processional. Rehearse the technology.
Hmm.
Make sure that you've got a good angle. If you are doing it on something like a phone, make sure that it's not blocking anything else, the photographer or any of the parents or what have you, and make sure that the sound is good.
Yeah. And lighting.
Yeah, the webcams and stuff. Yeah, don't handle that the same way that the the professional cameras do. Then you end up with like a silhouette or something.
Yeah.
Or white balance will be off.
The other thing too with the music, and it's so funny because I'm trying to think of the last time we did a wedding that had it. We've had a lot of the friends do it lately, and when you talk about the music, and it's weird. It's so important what people walk down the aisle to. I mean, that was a huge thing for Dorothy and I. I mean, it really is. And whether you've been married or not, and I thought it was like not whatever. And then we started planning, it's a whole thing, but it really is. And so when you're having someone do it, I think they can sometimes nail someone coming in, but it's always that recessional song because at that point they're watching the thing, they're not paying attention. R1 Tuesday, because I'm watching her. She's sitting there watching it in front of me. I'm running the stream, and the Bluetooth speaker is off in the corner, and I see her, oh shoot, get up and run over because you get invested in all that, right? And so I can't think of the last time I had one where they weren't already like up the aisle and then the song, starts playing. And and I know it's like a whatever and it's 2020 and who cares, but I do think that is an important thing that if people really care about, that it is worth kind of getting that nailed. And especially when it's like on a Zoom call or whatever, there is kind of just a delay. You start playing the music. It just seems like everything's on like a 5-second delay on Zoom calls anyway. So like by the time they play that music and they're long gone, and then you're like, well, what the heck even was the point of even doing that, right? If we aren't going to get it, if we're going to plan this and it's not going to work, then what was the point of even planning it to begin with? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple of officiants in town that I purposely um, try not to get emotionally invested in their ceremonies. One in particular, who unfortunately isn't with us anymore. Thank you, Mary. Um, I literally would just listen to her beginning. I listened for my cues, and because I remember one time at Willow's Lodge, and I got into it, and she steps out. Her big thing is she'd step out and talk to the audience and tell the love story, and you know. Next thing I know, there's like a tear coming down my cheek in a minute, and then all of a sudden I realized, oh crap, I'm like 5 seconds from a music cue, and it's like, okay, and after that, as much as I loved her, and loved listening to her voice, I just had to just like, almost tune it out a little bit as far as getting emotionally invested. And the same thing can happen if your guests are doing, and you want them to be. I mean, don't get me wrong, you want them to be. So
No, absolutely. So we've got some lists here. Having someone help moderate or narrate that is either on site or not on site. And obviously the offsite is just for like connectivity issues, kind of if if you're in the boon somewhere. But um, yeah, and then the audio problems with Zoom and YouTube. So, any other issues before we kind of start trying to solve some of these things? Anything else that we're thinking of in terms of like broad stuff that could happen?
I had a backup ready to go for Sunday
Yes,
with
yes.
all the login information, ready if we couldn't get on because I didn't want to take your signal. Um, I had someone ready to go for that. I know this if you're on site, and I know they looked really cheesy, and I should be working the drive-through someplace, but that little USB headset microphone unit I had on Sunday um, was great. I mean, I couldn't have because otherwise, if you're trying to do sound on your laptop and you're up like this trying to hear people and you're outside, there's no way I could have done it. And it worked out really well for them. And I was still able to play music from my computer for them. So they had music and things to do. I showed the videos. So just something like that. I mean, they used to be really inexpensive with everybody home. Now they're about $100, but way better than I think, ear earbuds and that sort of microphone, because it just didn't seem the same for whatever reason.
Alan, other issues before we start trying to solve some of these?
No.
No, that's good. I know. I think too, like Greg said, having someone, there's just so much downtime, and I think that's what people don't like get, and they go, because like for our when we do like the live streams, let's say the ceremony's at 5, and I go, okay, well we'll start it at 5:50, 5:55, so people can kind of make sure the audio's working, or that they're hearing, not that the audio on site, but that they that they got their speakers on, they got whatever, and I'll try to write in there like, okay, you should be hearing background noise if there's no music playing yet, because people, there's no music. What's going, there's all these, because it's like a panic, right? I think people, technology and Zoom and everything. And so you kind of almost like assume it's not going to work. And so you log in, right? If you're someone and you're trying to watch a Zoom wedding and you're like, oh my God, of course it's not working. Like, of course. And so, we're trying to figure out, but having someone, and whether it's text, writing in the thing, or like Greg had with the microphone, talking people through what is going on. Like, again, I try to do that, and it's tough because, like I said, I'm trying to make sure, because I'm at the same time that people are logging on and trying to figure it out, right? I'm trying to make sure everything's connected, but I'm trying to write in there like, okay, 10 minutes to go or 5 minutes to go. And I remember on Sunday, and again, it's a memorial, not to make light of it, but we're there and I'm trying to write in because I had Greg handling the audio, and someone writes in there like, nothing's happening yet. It's 1:03. And it's like, okay, Kathy, like we're getting there, like we're on it, but because people are on their computers, you're not there. You don't know what's going on. So I think definitely having someone there, that's in charge of that is someone that's not like your brother that's going to be in the wedding, or someone that's walking, someone that's like that's the boyfriend of your bridesmaid that's not in the wedding party, or somebody that's going to be there that's not, right? Am I kind of thinking through that, Alan? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have much to add to it,
Yes.
but
Yeah, not emotionally connected as much.
And then, obviously for the audio levels, so if they have a DJ, that's great if they can afford that. Is it something where you guys feel, and I don't know pricing for DJs like I do obviously for video, is that something that's attainable if I'm, going to get married and I'm going to have a Zoom wedding? Is that like, can I afford that for someone to come do that? I mean, how does that look? And you guys can please speak for yourselves, but then maybe just kind of reputable people in general. What is that? Is that something that's attainable to me if I want to have like the Zoom wedding of my dreams?
Well, I think part of it goes back to what do you want to have, right? Like for many couples now, this is just such a disappointing year, right? They had this vision of a certain wedding with a certain number of people, and that vision came crumbling down, right? So now they have a maximum of 30 people, and or they they potentially go to 2021 or something like that. But um, if you embrace what you have, if you embrace the 30 people here and the whatever online, um, you might have to spend some money, but you've saved a lot of money in catering, presumably. Um, and I think for the service that we're describing, most DJs would charge significantly less than what they would charge for a full blown wedding with a reception and all sorts of additional sound equipment and all sorts of additional planning and such. So I think so. It's at least worth a couple exploring and talking to some folks and saying, what would you offer me? What would you be able to do? How would you enhance my experience and my guests' experience?
Yeah, and now that receptions are legal and still within the numbers and stuff, I think it's even more so. And if you really think about it, you're especially on hiring us or other DJs and things, you're actually getting a pretty good value. You would probably have hired us anyway to do the ceremony and reception and things. So us tying in the video, just like we, if you were there, Reed, we would give you a line from our board and do the microphones. We're not charging to do that. I don't know anyone who does. Maybe someone does, but so you're actually getting, the good sound for your Zoom. Like my one, I'm doing one on Saturday, ceremony only, and I talked to him again this week, and I said, "Hey, we're gonna do any Zoom?" And they're not, and I was kind of surprised, and so I was prepared to facilitate that in any way that using what we've talked about or other resources, and it's not their thing, so that's cool. And but there's no money, they're not paying any extra for that. So if it's something for those other 100 people that are not on site, that's a pretty good bang for your buck.
I would also say that given how most DJs are not full in terms of their calendars and their
Yeah.
daily schedules right now, I think many DJs would come to the rehearsal too. And if you want to try and run through everything and have that peace of mind that it's all going to work, ask and
Yeah,
see if your potential DJ would do that.
that's a good point.
It's something I hadn't really thought about until I think Alan mentioned doing some, the two truths or the lie or whatever. I mean, is that something that, and I know Greg obviously like willing to work with people too. Is that something that you guys, if let's say you got booked for a wedding, in like 3 weeks, and they go, hey, we got to do this, would you like recommend that as something to do? I don't even know of doing some of those. Like, would you feel like you have the time to like do that while setting up and stuff to kind of do those sorts of things, or is that like an extra charge, or how would that work? I just got a thought of that. Sorry to spook that on you guys.
I think that it all starts with just a big comprehensive discussion with the couple about what they want. And that's just like a normal wedding plan where you just start with a blank slate and say, what do you want it to be like? What do you want to do? What do you want to skip?
What's your
And
vision?
in this case, some of the live streams are going to be just the ceremony. And some of the live streams are going to be the ceremony and maybe some of the other things, right? Maybe toasts, maybe first dance. And maybe you move the schedules around so that some of those things are combined. I feel like in 2020, what we have learned is that for most people, about an hour Zoom is their upper limit.
Yeah.
At the beginning in March and April, I think a lot of us were on 2 and 3 hour Zoom calls, and it just got to be too much. So I think even if you love a couple, it's a long commitment to spend 3 hours staring at a computer screen. So you want to talk to your couple about what they want. Maybe you live stream the ceremony, but you record the rest of the stuff. Maybe you record the whole day, and then soon thereafter, you try to play back 45 minutes, and you have a chat room with the couple, and the couple maybe even still dresses up in their outfit or something like that. So there's all sorts of different ways that people might approach this. But once you know that, yeah, then you throw in your own entertainment skills, and you offer, well, we've got some dead time. Here's how I would approach that, and here's how I might try and help you with that.
I think that's a great idea, Alan, and you're right about the time limits and stuff. One thing I think that would be fun to do, um, if you let's say you get the hour, so you kind of invite people to come in, not the half an hour before the ceremony starts like guests would on site, but 5 minutes before the ceremony starts or something to that effect. Or better yet, start the ceremony at 5 minutes after the hour and then go live at the top of the hour. Do the ceremony. Maybe you do a couple of, instead of going, we can't really do cocktail hours now. So maybe we go to some activities during that transition, either in locations or in the room. But one thing that I think would be really fun, and you'd have to probably do it from their phones. But what if the couple, one or both of them, um, actually called into the call in the Zoom and surprise people, or schedule them a time to come in, and they're on their phones going, "Hey, hello." And the reason I say it is I don't think I'd want them to come sit on my laptop and do it just from a safety end of things and stuff. But if they did it from their own phones, I mean, how cool that would be for the people at home. Hey, thank you guys for being here. They could almost do their thank you stuff. Now, whether you incorporate it in with the rest of the guests that are in person or they just do it, separate, wouldn't matter. Whatever they want to do. There would be, to have everybody there see it live, you'd have to have a TV or a projector or something like that. But anyway, that'd be kind of fun.
Sorry,
I
Rosie.
think that's
Rosie
the
came
next
in and was
evolution.
sorry.
I think more two-way stuff,
Yeah.
where the couple is getting involved with the guests, and like you say, it could require a big screen TV. But you know what? People can provide big screen TVs, and they hook up to computers, so you could figure out a way to make all that work. And I think that makes it much more rewarding for the guests who are just sitting there, being entertained. If you get to talk to the couple, how cool is that?
Or a follow me drone for the whole day.
It's tough though when you start getting into the two-way stuff. And it really is. And like the call I had yesterday with the Zoom thing, and because they were trying to do that like some sort of cooking class, and they wanted the interactivity where you're like the chef's like Ethan Stoll's cooking, right? And then people are watching or whatever. And I said, once you get the two-way, it's a lot harder. I don't disagree that that's like how it's going to get to be, maybe, but then you really are. I don't know. I think if you're broadcasting the one way, you can do, like we use YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Periscope, whatever. But then when it's that two way, it's like Microsoft Teams or Zoom. I mean, there's just not a lot of like options there for just getting that two way
Right.
thing. One thing I wanted to mention when Alan was talking about something, Rosie came in and was having a conniption, wanted dinner. We only did one this year, and I really was surprised that we didn't do more of them. I had a couple back in like April when all this came down, and they called, and they called it like a wedding quilt video is what they called it. And so we went and they got married. It was no photographer even. It was just them, her daughters, and then me. And we just did it like on a Thursday morning down at Lake Wilderness, and we got some footage of them walking and the ceremony and whatever. And then they each went home and did Zoom recordings with they had letters that they had written for each other. And then we got a bunch of family, toasts and stuff, because all these people couldn't obviously make it. Sent in. I made like a Dropbox link, and people recorded audio messages like you guys could facilitate, and video messages and photos and things. And then I put everything together. And then, like Alan was saying, we scheduled the time because they were originally going to get married on 8/8, that was going to be their date. And so we did all this and had it ready to go. And then I hosted a Zoom call on 8/8. And what was great about it was, you never could have done that live, or it would have been a nightmare trying to coordinate all this Zoom stuff and get 18 people on the whatever. We could make a Zoom thing. I facilitated because I wasn't busy trying to, live stream a million different things. And I could welcome everybody like you guys would, right? And say like, thanks for being here. This is what we're going to do. And then we played the video, and they had never seen it. Nobody had ever seen it, but it was cool. Cause like you guys said, then they got to experience all of that all together, and then they could talk, right? Cause then afterward, I just left the Zoom call open. I said, I'll be back in like an hour. So then they could still all talk and facilitate all that. But I know it wasn't like the whatever live thing, and I'm the videographer that's trying to pitch the live streaming, but it's something that was almost the same, but like 1/10 as hard as it would have been to try to coordinate all that live. I think it was a cool thing. And I'm just surprised that more people didn't do that this year. I really was like, oh, I bet a lot of people are going to want to do this. And I was wrong.
And I would say there's a whole group of people who are choosing to do sort of a small thing now and a party in 2021.
Right.
And having some professionals at the event that they have the ceremony this year can make next year's event much better too. Like in my case, I would certainly record the ceremony for a couple from the soundboard, and if they've got somebody who's running video, you could make an emotional ceremony recap that you could play next summer at a reception, and it would be a perfect intro, maybe right before their grand entrance or sometime at dinner or before their first dance or something like that, that helps next year's guest connect with the love that was at the ceremony this year.
Be, it'll be interesting with that too, because Alan, we've done those for years where people have gone to Hawaii or Mexico or whatever and gotten married, and then usually within a couple of months they come back. I'll be honest though, most of those parties have been disappointments. Um, and they really just think they're going to be ragers, and I think next year is going to be the exception to the rule. So don't get me wrong, but we come out and we show the wedding video from Maui, and people come out, and there's just what I always kind of related it to is you don't have that nervous energy being let out like you do at a typical ceremony and reception. And I don't know. So they're there, and even if they're in their dress and they're doing their best, I mean, they've been fun. Don't get me wrong, and people enjoy it, but it hasn't been one of those where I could have played a polka and they'd all ran out there and thought it was the best song ever.
I
So
That's an interesting perspective.
I don't think I or agree, disagree. I think this whole doing the 50-50 thing, I don't think it's going to work. I think it's going to be like you said, Greg, with the Maui thing, that this thing happened. I really don't. And I have couples that are doing it. Our friends are doing it. I'm not saying that I don't want it to, I'm not want it, to, I don't want to be right, but I do. I think it's going to be, you've been married now. It's going to be 16 months later, whatever the heck. And are you in your dress again? Did you guys have kids already? Are you trying to have kids? But I mean, I'm just, it's all this. And like, I just don't think, I mean, that's fine. But like, even as like and this is totally off the live stream thing in general, but I'm like, what does that even look like from like a storytelling videographer, photographer? I mean, this is not even a live stream discussion at this point, but what does that even look like? Like, well, so a year ago we got married and everybody was in masks, and now we're here today and she's not wearing her wedding dress, or they're not doing this, and he's already seen her, or they've already seen each other. I don't know. I mean,
well, let's bring it full circle then, because so we do the ceremony this year, or we've done it already. Okay, where they live stream it. So let's say they're going to do it the rest of this year, whether they do or don't have a small reception or not. But let's say it's like my couple this week, ceremony only. I think they're going to go out to dinner afterwards and stuff. Let's say a year from now they want to do something. So how do we, as professionals, bring that full circle around to bring that emotion to make it? And next year will be the exception to all the rules, both good, bad, and indifferent.
I tell them to buy a house and raise their family and get the love that way. No, I think
I don't sell real estate.
I think, I think, if you had a DJ record the audio and you had a professional or not, I think you need to have that. Or, then you could have Aunt Sally or whatever with the cell phone if you had that audio. And then you could even have the photos from your wedding, right? I mean, if you're trying to make it be a thing, I think like Alan said earlier with the Zoom calls, the video can cut out, but you still need that audio. And you could take, like I just had a wedding with Alante on Saturday, and like, if I would, if they had the audio, and then you could just put that with the photos, and it would be, you could still at least get that, even if you weren't trying to have, but then you got to have a DJ there or a videographer.
So, Reed, if a couple came to you this winter and you didn't do anything at their original ceremony, and they've got some cell phone video, some Zoom call, some stuff like that, is that something you could work with and make a good video for them?
Yeah, we would. Yeah, we would entertain that and try to figure it out. I mean, I just had someone yesterday. They had some old wedding on a DVD or something. They were still trying to get edited. So yeah, I mean, we do. You know, as long as obviously you wouldn't want to take anyone else's like a videographer's work and then without them being able to be on that. But yeah,
Okay, because
What if it
I
was
think
all
that
filmed vertically?
yeah, did he you take the sides of it like they do on the news and make it all
I've
fuzzy.
I've done that, and then it's weird. You do that, and some clients are like, "I don't like that." Like even you're like, "I don't." That's kind of what you're supposed to do. But, um, back to the live stream thing. So if I'm not there, and you guys are trying to live stream, if you got a couple, they go, "It's our dream." Next Saturday we're having a Zoom wedding. How or I guess let's say even well, we're trying to brainstorm if we aren't there. How do they get the audio? Because if you're there, then they do the audio. They have a friend do the thing. So we've got that right. They can do a Zoom call. You guys can punch in the audio. That's
Okay,
fine.
but let's say we're not there.
So now, yeah. So let's take it one step further. So if none of us are there, and you want to have the best, Alan, I see you thinking you want to have the best live stream you can have with no professionals there at all.
I'm thinking Bill Herman.
I don't know what that is.
Alan does.
Oh.
Yeah, but I'm not sure I get the relevance.
You want to go ahead and I'll tell you when you're done.
So you still have to have the equipment. You have to have some microphones, right? Like, and you probably have to have a speaker. So, and a couple could rent microphones. A couple could rent a PA system. If I was recommending just the most basic economical way to do it, I would probably get microphones for everybody who's going to be speaking at any time, either the lapel or the handhelds. And I think Reed's saying.
Well, I was going to grab my mic, but yeah, I mean, well, you continue and then I'll ask my question. Sorry.
And if you need to just send that to a speaker, that's okay. It's not the best thing. A good DJ would have a mixer in there to pull in all the channels and pull in the music. But if you got to send those mics to a speaker, that's okay. If you have some technology experience, you could take the sound from the speaker through a cord and put that in your phone or your tablet or your laptop. Option two, if that seems too much, is to make sure that your phone or your tablet or your laptop is near that speaker. Because we were talking about before how sound, you can't pick that up from 40 feet. But if your speaker is right here and your phone is right here, you're going to do better as long as the sound is coming out of the speaker okay.
Yeah, it kills me how much it kills me how many times I ask this and couples don't do it. What does it cost to rent? Is it Guitar Center? What does it cost to rent a microphone and a speaker for a day for a wedding?
$150.
I mean, because I talk with them all the time. Because I say even if we're not live streaming, like we had one last week, they just wanted the video, they didn't want to live stream it, which is fine. I have self-recording mics. We clip them on, and I always tell them, I go, this is no amplification at all. None of this doesn't help any of your guests. If it was me, I would rent a thing. Oh, we don't need that. Well, and we were at Chateau Lille. And even you would think like Chateau Lille, the serene meadow, it's a beautiful venue. You still have all that the freeway noise. We had goats going. We had all this. I'm like, you couldn't hear anything, right? And there was 10 people in the audience, 12 people, right? And I mean, and my mics were up, so I'm fine for later. But I'm like, man, for $150 or whatever to get that, and obviously, getting power or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I would say you're trying to do it, and then you could do a phone. Then you could have a phone up there, set it on the chair or something. At least if you got some audio coming at you, right?
There's power on the tree on the back right of that at Chateau Lille.
Uh-oh, Alan's going on a field trip.
Oh.
Did you bring us a? Okay.
I wanted to show you. This is something you can buy for your phone. You put the phone right in here, and then you can put this on a tripod, so you could get a fairly steady shot.
Right.
This was $20 at Glazers.
Yeah.
Yeah, Amazon. I have a similar one that's more plasticky and stuff. So I'll go one less version of what you guys are talking, and I'll qualify this as a DIY as a DIY sort of thing. If you're going to be in a place where 30 guests could hear you and the officiant talking, so this is no amplification on site. So if you're in a small room, I mean, with social distancing, 30 people spread out is actually kind of a bigger area. But if you can be in a place where everybody can hear people talk normally from front to back, and you don't need amplification, but you want to do the Zoom. So if you have Alan's clip that he just showed us, and you have person, videotaping, thank you, from the second row or something like that. And if you want to do audio for about, probably $60 or $70, you can get a lavalier microphone. You want to get one that's omnidirectional off of Amazon. Rode, RODE, is a good brand. And that's where the Bill Herman comes in, because our friend Bill does walks every day. And he's out in the snow and the rain and the middle of nowhere in Minnesota. And you can hear him. I mean, you hear the road noise, but you hear him really well. And he just has a nice little Rode lavalier clipped on his chest and his phone on a selfie stick walking around. And probably he's been doing this like 500 days in a row, and he sounds great every day. So if the officiant had that clipped on, had his cell phone in his pocket, and was on that same Zoom call like we were talking about earlier, and someone else was shooting video, and you played with the mute buttons, just muted everything else and left him live, you could get some omnidirectional sound from him, from the couple, and it would sound good. Now, if you get one that's not omnidirectional, it's going to be like Alan's earbuds he's got on right now. You're going to just hear him really well. So,
well, and that's what I think people need to get is when it comes to this audio stuff. And I think that people don't realize how quiet they talk, how loud the world is, especially when you're, I've had them even where I've got, we usually clip it on like the officiant and then the groom, normally just because they have a jacket, whatever. I mean, you can mic brides. It's a lot more work. They make like white microphone cables for that sort of thing. But like, I just don't think people realize how quiet it is, how loud the world is. We've had people so quiet and their, partner, whatever, is 3 feet away. And it's still because those microphones pick up everything. And that's what people, take your laptop, set it on the desk, and then go walk 10 feet back and try to do a Zoom call with someone and see if they can hear you. And the problem is, that Zoom call there, it just tries to like boost all that audio up. And so you get everything with it. It just ends up being this whole noise cloud kind of thing, if you can visualize that. So I think, like we said, if you're trying to do it, be realistic and try to test it out ahead of time. Go in your backyard, take your laptop or your iPad, whatever, go stand and try to talk to your partner, 10, 15 feet away and see if you can hear it. Take your phone, hit the record button on it. Don't even mess with Zoom. Just take your phone, hit record, go walk 10 feet away and see if your phone can hear you. And it can't, or it'll hear you and it'll hear everything else in the world with it. It'll hear the dog barking, down the street. But I mean, people just don't get how the audio works, right? And how hard that is.
well, think about what you do when you're talking to, your mom, and then you want to put the phone down, and so they can't hear it. Sometimes you hold it to your chest, but you can practically so you can't see my phone. You can practically just turn it, and it cuts it, more than half. Or we all have that friend who's, talks with their hands, and so you're trying to pick them up. So there's options, and it like with everything, it comes down to what Alan keeps saying: what's important to you, and having that discussion, and going and working backwards for that, and then how many people are going to be there and live, and how many people are going to be, over the air, and man, if you're going to have 20, 30, I mean, this one I did that I was a guest, there's 40 people on from around the world. And here's another cool thing: if I could have moderated that one, half, well, shoot, I bet you only a quarter of, most people only knew, say, 10 people on the call. And so how cool would it have been to come in 15 minutes early and make introductions? Hey, tell us about it. How do you know them? Because there was people from New Jersey. I had no idea. I assumed they were the groom's family, but I didn't know that. And I mean, that would have been, we could have had our own little party on Zoom.
I think that's a great idea, and making it feel do the icebreakers that way. I think that's great, and it
Yeah.
doesn't need to be a big, like we were talking earlier. I mean, games and stuff are fun too, but just how do you know? And you can record all that stuff. Zoom will let you record that. I assume
Yeah.
Teams will let you do that, right? And I think that's a great idea.
And it could add to the party, and they don't have to stick around. And if the bride and groom do a drive-by later and say hi, great. But if they don't, I'm thinking on this call was the bride's grandma, who I know really well, and I know she didn't know over half the people on there, and it would have just been so cool to not just for me, but she's now related to some of these folks, and so it would have been really cool to facilitate that. And people are older; nobody's gonna be traveling for a while, especially if you're older and stuff. And uh, so I guess there's possibilities, and I think that's cool. I mean, if we had this conversation a year ago, we wouldn't have had this many conversations. I mean, trying to explain to grandma what a Zoom call is.
I will say, and Greg, both of you guys always ask, what's important to the couple, right? What's important to your day? I will say, and even that one on Tuesday that we did out in the middle of nowhere, and the bride knew that ahead of time. She said, "Hey, I don't even know if this is a possibility. Obviously you're going to record it, and then do your best, right live. If it glitches at all, that's okay. We're going to try to do it, and then record it for later, because obviously." That's the other question. I think a lot of people, you do, if you have a professional or someone that knows how to do it, you will have that recorded for later. I mean, Zoom will do it. If you like the one that Greg and I did on Sunday, we both had it going, the records, just because
Well,
2020.
good thing we did.
Well, yeah, because mine kept kicking me out. No, absolutely. That's actually a
And we were
great
on
point.
two different internet sources too. So
Yeah, we were both laptops next to, that is true. Both laptops next to each other. I was on their Wi-Fi and you were on a hotspot, right?
you were on Ethernet. I was on Wi-Fi.
And yeah, mine kept kicking me out. And so the record, but it missed a lot of it. It would miss like the 5 minutes. So yes, that's a great point. But you know, whether and this is a terrible thing, but whether it's not, it's important to the couple, and I absolutely value that. The weddings and the memorials, we've done a bunch of memorials now too. The ones that we've streamed where people really make an effort, it's so appreciated by the people that can't be there. It's so appreciated. And even that one on Tuesday, even though it glitched out a little bit, they all wrote in there like, thank you so much, like everybody, for me going out there setting up all this crap by the side of the lake, the couple paying me to do that, everyone going out there doing that, them trying to make the effort, work with everything. People really appreciate that, and they really are bummed out that they can't be there. And so making that effort, I think, is a really big thing for people. And especially, honestly, like if you're inviting people or you had to cancel, or I don't know how registries and all that are working anymore. We're trying, wedding registries and all that, but going through those efforts to make people feel like they're included, I think are really underrated, just how much people appreciate couples, putting that work in. So that's my 2 cents.
I agree. Heck, nowadays everybody's working at home. Maybe your work will let you expense a lavalier microphone. You can use it for your wedding.
Yeah.
It's for business use.
This has been great. Anything else? I don't want to keep hammering the same points home, but I want to make sure we got anything else any ideas you guys wanted to talk about today?
I'd say just don't be afraid of the technology, and also don't put it on yourself for the day of. You have to delegate. And that's why I suggested, even though I was on site on for the memorial service, I had a backup ready to go off site. I think if you can do that, if anything, even if we test it and there's, 5 people, we get there the day of and there's 30 and everybody's online, that's going to affect your bandwidth. So try to delegate it out, and just think about those people that can't be there. Like you were just saying, I think even if you're hesitant, I think you should just do it. And it sometimes it's better to do it, but you can, for very little expense and effort, you can make it so exceptional. And I think that's what we should do, or hire a professional if you can do that.
Alan, anything?
I mean, to me, one of the great things about a wedding is the community that comes together for that day, right? It's your work people, it's your family, it's your friends from back in other areas of your life. And so the technology exists to keep that group still coming together. And I think ultimately that's pretty rewarding. I mean, people are not going to get to have the weddings that they originally envisioned, but you can still have a wedding that brings the people together. And so I think the best strategy is to talk about it to some people who are in on the technology, figure out what you want to do, what your capabilities are, and then enjoy it.
Yeah, and even I think just one thing I've learned this year, and I think you guys agree with, having all these, recordings of all this stuff and like that open house, the memorial that we did. Some of the stuff right now is just invaluable, and maybe we took it for granted a year ago or whatever. But like, where you moderated that open house and having just being able to record the stories that people are having, about, the client, whatever passed away. Um, just having all that stuff saved and being able to do that and having people at your wedding and like you said, having someone be able to introduce people and share stories, how do you know them? And even if it's not the best quality video, audio, having all that there, I think is so cool. I mean, if anything, I think that's the best idea that came out of today is if you're going to do a Zoom call, have someone that's on there, record it and run like you guys did, run like an MC thing and try to talk and get some stories and stuff ahead of time, because otherwise it's boring and people are impatient and ready to go. And how cool would it be if there was only 10 people to watch your wedding and they all got to share 30 seconds about how they got to know
Yeah.
you and have that recorded? I think that would be a really cool idea. So I think that's if nothing else, I think that's a great thing that came out of today. So
Absolutely.
thank you guys so much for coming on. Why don't you?
You.
Oh, thank you. Any last mentions, plugs, anything before we go? Greg, we'll start, and then as always, we give Alan the last word.
Greg Lowder, Affairs to Remember Entertainment, DJSeattle.com. And I'll just put it out there. If anybody has questions about this or wants to just discuss it, call or email me. I'd be happy to go through, share my experiences. We've kind of shared a lot of them today, but I would be happy to. And I'm available. I can virtually moderate these too. I mean, don't have to be in the same city. I mean, if people want a quality MC to come in and have fun with their guests while they're getting married, happy to do that.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that we're done because I've got to get to the podcasts on Apple iTunes and listen to XFL Markcast. And then I've got to post my 5-star review. It's the best XFL podcast ever.
Thank you, Alan. That's a plug for if you're an XFL football fan there, you just want some random shenanigans with me not being professional for a change, you could go over to xflshow.com. No, but I mean this. And before we go, I think if you guys, who knows, or other DJs, but putting together some sort of virtual MC thing, I don't think is a terrible idea. And figuring that out. But I think recording those stories and those messages, I think are cool. And just trying to make the best. I think this podcast has always been trying to make the best of everything right now and embracing what we have. And don't think, okay, well, I'm only going to be able to have 30 people at my wedding. Think I could have more people watch my wedding than would probably ever be able I could ever invite. Right. And so I think that just trying to look at the positives, I think would be really cool. So thank you guys again. This has been another episode of Best Made Weddings. If you have a question for an upcoming episode, you can go to bestmadevideos.com/survey. And thank you guys so much again. Greg was just on our Get to Know Your Wedding Pro podcast that's live. Will still be the current one when this comes out. And Alan was a guest way back in episode number 2, first ever guest on the Get to Know Your Wedding Pro podcast. So thank you guys so much again, and stay safe.